It was a late afternoon when the city streets were buzzing with the usual mix of noise, people, and hurried footsteps. The sun was starting to dip, casting long shadows on the pavement, and the air carried a slight chill that hinted at the coming evening. Among the crowd walked a man who, at first glance, could have been mistaken for any other businessman hurrying home after a long day. His shoes clicked steadily against the sidewalk. His suit was perfectly pressed and his tie was carefully knotted. Yet despite his polished exterior and calm expression, there was something in his eyes that suggested a mind always in thought, a heart quietly searching for something it could not yet name. As he made his way down the familiar streets, he noticed a small commotion near a street corner. A woman was sitting on a worn blanket, with two tiny children clinging to her side. Her clothes were simple, and though clean, they looked tired and patched from long days of use. The children, twins no older than 3, laughed softly and reached for small objects their mother offered them to play with. She smiled at them in return, a mix of exhaustion and tenderness, her eyes carrying the story of countless struggles and quiet sacrifices. The man slowed his pace. His curiosity piqued. There was something about the way she moved, the gentle way she corrected the children when they stumbled, and the softness of her voice as she whispered to them that drew his attention. He found himself unconsciously observing her from a short distance, noticing how her fingers worked deftly, arranging a few handmade trinkets on a small cloth to catch the attention of passers-by. She glanced up at anyone who approached, offering a polite smile, yet her eyes held a quiet wariness, a careful calculation of how much trust she could extend to strangers. Despite the bustle around them, there was a stillness that seemed to surround her, a pocket of life that was separate from the chaos of the city. The children giggled as they tugged at her skirt, and she chuckled softly, the sound carrying a warmth that contrasted with the cold metal and glass of the buildings around her. The man felt a strange pull, an inexplicable sense of familiarity. His heart skipped slightly, but he dismissed it at first, attributing it to curiosity or a fleeting sense of empathy for someone in need. He continued walking, but something inside urged him to pause. He looked down at the small blanket where she had set her few belongings. The handmade items were simple yet thoughtful, little bracelets, a few small paintings on cardboard, and tiny knitted toys. They were humble, yet they spoke of care and patience, a quiet dedication that resonated with him in a way he could not immediately understand. He found himself thinking about the hours it must have taken her to create them, the effort poured into something that barely earned her enough to survive. The woman noticed him standing nearby and offered a tentative smile. The man returned it, and in that brief exchange, something unspoken passed between them. It was not just recognition of each other's presence. It was the beginning of a connection that neither fully understood yet. The twins, sensing the attention, waved their small hands, their laughter ringing like tiny bells, breaking the barrier of hesitation and introducing a touch of innocence into the encounter. He stepped closer, careful not to startle her, and his gaze fell on a small detail that made his heart pause. A ring on her finger caught the sunlight, simple yet distinctive. He felt an odd familiarity, a strange recognition that sent a shiver down his spine. For a moment he was transported back to a different time, a different life. When someone he had loved deeply wore a similar ring, the memory was vivid, the laughter, the conversations, the shared dreams that had once felt so real. He had not thought of them in years, but the sight of this ring, glinting in the soft afternoon light, brought everything rushing back. The woman continued to care for her children, unaware of the storm of emotions playing across the man's face. He watched as she gently cleaned a small smear of dirt from one of the twins' cheeks, her hands trembling slightly from fatigue yet steady with love. He thought about the journey that had brought her here, the hardships that had shaped her life, and he felt an unfamiliar pang of sorrow mixed with admiration. She was weary, yet her spirit remained unbroken. There was dignity in the way she carried herself, even when circumstances had tried to wear her down. Unable to resist the pull any longer, he took a hesitant step closer. His presence seemed to startle her, but she quickly masked it with a polite nod. He offered a soft greeting, simple and unobtrusive, and she responded in kind. Their conversation began cautiously, with small words exchanged about the children and the city. But beneath the surface, both felt a stirring of recognition and curiosity. The twins' laughter became a bridge between them, breaking down the initial distance that had existed As they spoke, he noticed more details, the way she absent-mindedly touched the ring on her finger, the careful movements she made to keep the children entertained, and the quiet resilience in her eyes. Each observation deepened his sense of connection and his growing certainty that fate had brought him to this moment. He was drawn not just to her beauty or her presence, but to the history that seemed to linger in the air around her, a history that he had long forgotten yet was suddenly impossible to ignore. For her part, the woman began to feel a subtle shift in the atmosphere. There was something different about this man, a calmness, a kindness, and an air of familiarity that made her pause. She sensed that he was not merely another passerby, but someone who saw more than just her current situation. There was an unspoken understanding, a recognition that transcended words and hinted at shared memories buried deep in the past. She did not yet know why, but the feeling unsettled her, stirring emotions she had not felt in a long time. Time seemed to slow as they continued their brief interaction. The city noise faded into the background, replaced by the quiet rhythm of the twins' laughter, the soft clatter of coins in a small cup, and the gentle cadence of their conversation. Each word, each glance carried weight, building a bridge between past and present, between two lives that had taken different paths yet were now converging in this unexpected moment. The man felt a growing need to understand, to uncover the story that had brought her here. He wanted to know her struggles, her joys, her fears, and the journey that had shaped her into the person before him. He sensed that this encounter was more than chance. It was an opportunity to reconnect with a part of his own past, to confront memories long buried, and perhaps to find something he had thought lost forever. As the sun continued to descend, casting golden light across the streets, he made a quiet decision. He would not walk away. He would speak, listen, and try to bridge the gap that time and circumstances had created. There was a bond here, fragile yet undeniable, and he felt compelled to explore it, gently and respectfully. Without rushing or overwhelming her, the woman, sensing his genuine interest, allowed herself a small measure of trust. She shared a brief story about how she came to be there, speaking of the difficulties she faced raising the twins alone, of the long days and sleepless nights, and the small joys that kept her going. Her voice was steady, though tinged with vulnerability, and he listened intently, absorbing every word, every emotion, every nuance. In that moment, amidst the ordinary chaos of the city, something extraordinary was taking place. Two lives, separated by time and circumstance, were reconnecting through small gestures, shared glances, and the quiet language of recognition. The man understood that this was only the beginning, that the story of their past had not yet fully revealed itself, and that the journey ahead would require patience, empathy, and courage. As the shadows grew longer and the city lights began to flicker on, he lingered a little longer, reluctant to leave, yet aware that this was a delicate beginning. He knew that the ring, the laughter of the twins, and the resilience in her eyes were all signs that their paths were meant to cross once more. And in that gentle, fleeting encounter, the first threads of a renewed connection were woven, setting the stage for a story that was far from over, a story that promised hope, discovery, and perhaps a second chance at a love long forgotten. As the evening settled over the city, the man could not stop thinking about the woman and her twins. He walked slowly along the street, his mind replaying every detail from the encounter. The laughter of the children, the way her hands moved when she adjusted their clothing, and the small glimmer of the ring on her finger. Everything lingered in his thoughts. He felt a strange combination of wonder and disbelief. How could someone so familiar be in a situation so difficult? How had life led her to this point? The ring had awakened memories he had long buried. Memories of youth and first love, of days when the world seemed full of endless possibilities. He could remember her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke about dreams they had shared, and the warmth of her presence that had once made him feel alive in ways nothing else could. Seeing her now, struggling yet resilient, made those memories flood back with unexpected intensity. He decided he could not let the moment pass without understanding it fully. The next day, he returned to the same street, hoping to find her again. His heart pounded with anticipation and nervousness. When he spotted her, his chest tightened not from anxiety but from a deep, unspoken connection that seemed to transcend years. The twins ran toward him, laughing and reaching out their small hands. The woman's eyes widened slightly, then softened as she recognized him once more. She offered a cautious, polite smile, but it was clear she felt the same sense of recognition that he did. He approached slowly, making sure to respect her space and her dignity. He spoke softly, keeping his words simple. He commented on the children, praised their energy and laughter, and complimented the handmade items she had arranged on the blanket. His tone was warm, genuine, and careful not to come across as patronizing. She responded, her voice steady but curious, and for the first time in a long while she allowed herself to feel a little less guarded. There was a quiet understanding forming, a bridge between their worlds. As they spoke, he could not resist noticing more details. The way her eyes moved, tracking the twins' every action, the careful way she spoke, weighing her words, the slight tension in her shoulders from constant vigilance, all of it told a story of struggle and endurance. Yet beneath the fatigue and worry, he could see a spark of the woman he had once known, the kindness, intelligence, and gentle humor that had captivated him years ago. The conversation eventually drifted to their lives, their experiences and the paths that had led them here. She spoke cautiously, revealing enough to paint a picture of her challenges but leaving the deepest parts of her heart closed off. She told him about the difficulties of raising twins alone, of nights when she could not sleep, and of days when finding enough food or work seemed impossible. She spoke with a quiet resilience that impressed him deeply. She had endured hardships that he could only imagine, yet she remained compassionate, resourceful, and loving. He listened with growing admiration and empathy. He did not interrupt or try to offer solutions too quickly. Instead, he focused on understanding her fully. Every story she told, every detail she shared, made him more certain that he needed to approach this with care. He wanted to reconnect not as a savior or a benefactor, but as someone who genuinely cared and respected her journey. At one point, he gently mentioned the ring, asking if it was indeed the one from years ago. Her hand paused and she looked down, tracing the familiar shape with her fingers. A subtle smile appeared on her lips, and for a moment silence hung between them. No words were needed. The ring had confirmed what their hearts already suspected. The past and present had collided in a quiet, profound moment of recognition. Memories from their youth came flooding back for both of them. He recalled their long conversations about hopes and dreams, the afternoons spent walking through parks and streets, and the small promises they had made to each other. She remembered the same, though life had taken her in unexpected directions. She had faced loss, hardship, and loneliness, yet she had survived, raising her children with determination and love. The man realized that this meeting was more than coincidence. Fate had placed them here not as strangers, but as two people with shared history now given a second chance. He could see the possibility of healing and reconnection, yet he also understood the need to tread carefully. The woman had built walls to protect herself and her children, and any attempt to break through them too forcefully could push her away. Patience and respect were essential. Over the following days, he made small gestures to build trust. He bought food for the children when they were hungry, offered warm clothing for the cooler evenings, and quietly observed the twins' playful interactions. Each act was discreet, never overwhelming, always thoughtful. The woman noticed but did not feel judged or belittled. She began to see that he genuinely cared, not as a wealthy stranger looking to fix her life, but as someone reconnecting with a familiar part of her past. They spent more time together in short encounters, each one deepening their connection. He asked about her hobbies, listened to her stories about small victories, and shared memories from his own life without overshadowing hers. They laughed together over shared memories, and the tension that had existed between them slowly began to ease. The twins grew comfortable around him, recognizing his warmth and kindness. Their laughter and innocent curiosity provided a bridge between their worlds, allowing the woman to see him not just as a figure from her past, but as someone who could be part of her present. One afternoon, as the sun cast golden light across the city streets, he spoke more openly about the past. He shared memories of the time they had spent together, the dreams they had once held, and the ways in which life had pulled them apart. She listened quietly, sometimes smiling, sometimes reflecting, and sometimes looking away as emotions stirred within her. The honesty and vulnerability in his words resonated deeply, opening a small window into a world she had almost forgotten existed. She, too, began to share more. She spoke of her ambitions, the small steps she had taken to provide for her children and the moments of hope that kept her going despite the challenges. She admitted fears and regrets, acknowledging the difficult choices she had made along the way. Each revelation brought them closer, not through wealth or status, but through mutual understanding, empathy, and the shared human experience of loss, love, and perseverance. As the days turned into weeks, their bond continued to grow. The man realized that he was falling back into the emotions he had felt years ago, but this time tempered with maturity, patience, and respect. He was not trying to recapture the past blindly. He was learning to appreciate the present and the strength she had gained through her journey. She in turn began to feel a cautious trust, recognizing that his presence was not an intrusion but a gentle, steady force of support. In quiet moments, he would watch the twins play, marveling at their energy and innocence. Their laughter reminded him of the beauty of life, of hope that persists even in the face of hardship. The woman, observing him with the children, began to see the depth of his character, not just as a successful man, but as someone capable of patience, compassion, and genuine care. She felt a spark of something she had long thought lost, the possibility of connection and love rekindled. One evening, as they parted ways after another day together, they shared a quiet look of understanding. No words were necessary. Their shared history, the ring, the laughter of the twins, and the small moments of trust had spoken volumes. Both knew that their story was far from over, that the path ahead would require care, patience, and courage, but also that they had taken the first real steps toward a renewed connection. In the stillness of that evening, as the city lights flickered on and the streets quieted, they carried within them the sense that life had offered a second chance, a chance to reconnect, to heal, and perhaps to rediscover a love that had never truly faded. And while the road ahead was uncertain, both felt a quiet confidence that together, they could navigate it step by step, heart to heart. The days that followed felt both ordinary and extraordinary for the man and the woman. Every encounter brought small surprises, quiet joys, and glimpses of a connection that had lain dormant for years. The man could not help but be fascinated by the resilience she showed, the gentle way she navigated life's difficulties, and the warmth that radiated from her despite the hardships she faced. He had met many people in his life, but there was something unique about her, a depth of spirit and courage that drew him closer with each passing moment. One morning, he found her at the same street corner, arranging her small handmade items with careful precision. The twins were playing beside her, their laughter filling the air with lightness that contrasted sharply with the bustling city around them. He approached gently, careful not to startle her, and greeted her warmly. The children waved excitedly and she smiled, a mix of surprise and comfort in her eyes. Their connection, once hesitant and cautious, was beginning to solidify into a quiet understanding built on mutual respect and shared history. He asked about the children's day, and she spoke of small victories and little troubles, moments of pride when they learned something new, minor frustrations when life felt overwhelming. Her voice carried a rhythm that was both calm and determined, revealing her patience and dedication. He listened, genuinely interested, never interrupting or offering unsolicited advice. His presence was steady, a silent support that allowed her to feel heard and understood without judgment. As the conversation deepened, the ring on her finger became a quiet symbol of the past. He asked about it gently, and she shared the story of how it had remained with her through all the years, a reminder of promises and dreams that life had challenged but not entirely broken. The man felt a rush of emotion, memories flooding back of their youth, of laughter and shared dreams, of moments when the world had seemed full of endless possibilities. The recognition was mutual, and for a moment time seemed to collapse, bringing past and present together in a fragile, beautiful instant. She began to open up more about her life since they had parted. She spoke of the struggles of raising twins alone, of nights when worry kept her awake, and days when even small tasks felt overwhelming. Yet through her words he could sense her strength, a quiet courage that had carried her through adversity. He realized that she had faced challenges far greater than he could have imagined, and yet she had emerged with a spirit unbroken, nurturing and protective, especially toward her children. He shared parts of his own life as well, carefully choosing words that revealed honesty without overwhelming her. He spoke of his career, his travels, and the achievements he had earned, but he also admitted to loneliness, regrets, and the emptiness that sometimes accompanied success. He did not boast or seek sympathy. He simply shared, creating a space for trust and vulnerability to grow. In response, she listened, sometimes smiling, sometimes reflecting, but always with a sense of cautious connection that was beginning to take root. As they spent more time together, he noticed small gestures that revealed her character, the way she paused to adjust a child's clothing, the soft murmurs she used to calm them, the gentle way she treated even minor setbacks as opportunities to teach patience and resilience. He admired her deeply, not just for her beauty or charm, but for the strength and love she poured into her everyday life. Each observation made him more certain that their reunion was meaningful, that their paths had converged for reasons beyond coincidence. One afternoon, he offered to take the twins to a nearby park for a short while, giving her a moment to rest. She hesitated, pride and caution evident in her expression, but eventually agreed, trusting him enough to allow the brief separation. Watching from a distance, she saw how naturally he interacted with the children, how he engaged their curiosity and played with them without condescension or force. The sight eased some of her worries and allowed her to see him as someone who genuinely cared, not as a savior, but as a friend and a familiar presence from a past she had not forgotten. Their conversations gradually shifted from cautious exchanges to deeper reflections. They spoke about dreams once shared, about paths chosen and those abandoned, about the small joys and struggles that life had handed them. Each story, each memory strengthened the bond that had begun to form. The man realized that he was learning as much from her resilience as she was learning from his experiences. There was a balance forming, a mutual respect that allowed them to connect as equals rather than as someone helping another. She shared moments of vulnerability, revealing fears and regrets that had weighed on her for years. He listened intently, offering reassurance not through grand gestures but through presence, through steady attention, through quiet understanding. He never interrupted, never judged, only acknowledged her feelings and allowed her to express herself fully. In doing so, he helped her recognize her own strength and the love she had maintained for her children despite everything. In return, he shared small pieces of his past, of mistakes and missed opportunities, of moments when ambition had overtaken attention to personal connections. She listened with empathy, understanding that life had shaped them both in unique ways. The connection deepened, grounded not in nostalgia alone, but in a shared acknowledgement of the challenges, growth, and lessons each had experienced. One evening, as they walked together through a quieter street, the twins holding their mother's hands, he spoke softly about the future. He expressed a desire to support her in ways that respected her independence, to offer help without undermining her dignity. She nodded, appreciating his thoughtfulness and careful approach. It was a delicate balance, accepting assistance without feeling powerless, and he understood that respect and patience were the keys to maintaining trust. They began to imagine possibilities together, small steps toward improving life without overwhelming change, perhaps additional resources for education for the children, perhaps opportunities to sell more of her handmade crafts, perhaps simply more moments of connection and support that could make life a little easier. They spoke cautiously, aware that reality was complex, but hopeful that cooperation and trust could create meaningful progress. The twins, oblivious to the emotional depth surrounding them, continued to play and laugh, their joy acting as a gentle reminder of life's simplicity and beauty. Watching them, the woman felt a renewed sense of hope. She realized that the man's presence was not a threat to her autonomy, but a bridge to a world where she could feel supported without losing her independence. The recognition of the ring, the shared past, and the careful nurturing of trust had all led to this point, where possibility seemed within reach. As days turned into weeks, their bond became stronger, though always measured and respectful. They met in quiet moments, exchanged stories, laughed at shared memories, and discovered new aspects of each other's character. Each interaction reinforced the understanding that their connection was genuine, built not on wealth or circumstance but on mutual respect, shared history, and authentic concern for each other's well-being. One morning, the woman allowed herself to talk about her dreams for the future, not just for survival but for growth. She spoke of desires for her children's education, of small ambitions to improve her skills and of personal goals she had postponed for years. The man listened, offering encouragement without imposing, validating her ideas and showing belief in her ability to succeed. His presence was no longer merely comforting. It had become a source of inspiration and quiet motivation. Together, they began to sketch small plans, realistic steps that could create meaningful change over time. The discussions were practical, grounded in reality, yet carried an undercurrent of hope and optimism. Each plan, each decision reinforced the trust between them and deepened their emotional bond. They were learning to navigate life as a team, not as savior and recipient, but as two individuals who had shared history and were now building a present together. By the end of part 3, the woman had begun to allow herself to feel hope and trust, while the man recognized that the connection they shared was deep and enduring. Both had grown through their interactions, learning patience, empathy, and the importance of careful, respectful communication. The twins had become a symbol of resilience and joy, a reminder of what truly mattered, and their laughter continued to guide the moments of connection between the man and the woman. Their story, though still unfolding, was taking shape, rooted in understanding, mutual respect, and the rekindling of a love that had never truly faded. Over the following weeks, the bond between the man and the woman grew stronger, built on trust, shared memories, and the slow but steady understanding of each other's lives. Each meeting brought new moments of connection, small gestures of kindness and glimpses of the deep affection that had been buried beneath years of distance and hardship. The man was careful, never rushing, always giving her space to feel comfortable and in control. He wanted her to know that his interest was genuine, not fleeting, and that he valued her independence and strength. One morning, he brought a small basket of food for the woman and her twins. It was simple, bread, fruit, and some treats for the children, but the gesture carried thoughtfulness rather than charity. He placed it gently near her blanket, and she looked up with surprise, her eyes softening as she realized the care behind the action. The twins clapped their small hands and squealed with delight, immediately diving into the treats. She thanked him quietly, a hint of a smile breaking through her usual guarded expression. The man simply nodded, satisfied that his presence had provided a small relief without making her feel embarrassed or dependent. As the days passed, he continued to find discreet ways to support her life. He helped arrange minor repairs to her makeshift stall, provided materials for the crafts she sold, and offered advice on simple ways to manage her small business. He never imposed or took control, always allowing her to make the final decisions. His respect for her autonomy became a foundation for trust, and slowly, she began to feel more comfortable letting him into her life in small ways. One afternoon, while the twins napped, they sat together quietly on the blanket, watching the city bustle around them. The man asked about her dreams, not just for the present, but for the future. She spoke hesitantly at first, unsure if it was appropriate to share her hopes, but he encouraged her gently, listening without judgment. She told him about wanting to provide better education for the twins, about learning new skills that could help her earn more, and about the small personal goals she had put aside for survival. As she spoke, her eyes shone with a mix of hope and cautious excitement, and he felt a swell of admiration for her resilience and ambition. He shared small stories from his own life, not boasting but explaining his experiences, mistakes, and lessons learned. He emphasized the value of patience, perseverance, and staying true to one's principles. She listened intently, occasionally asking questions and seeking advice, appreciating his wisdom and perspective. Their conversations became a blend of shared memories, practical guidance, and emotional support. Each dialogue brought them closer, reinforcing the subtle trust that had begun to flourish. The twins, curious and full of energy, often interrupted their conversations, tugging at their mother's clothing or asking for attention. Both adults adapted easily, allowing laughter and playfulness to fill the moments between words. The man learned to engage them naturally, playing simple games, telling little stories, and making them laugh without overstepping boundaries. In these small interactions, the woman saw not just kindness, but an understanding of the delicate balance between guidance and freedom, reassurance and autonomy. One afternoon, he accompanied her to a nearby market to buy supplies for her crafts. As they walked together side by side, he noticed how she navigated the busy streets with grace and awareness. She was careful, alert to her surroundings, but never hurried or overwhelmed. He admired her resourcefulness, the way she made small decisions with confidence despite the weight of responsibility she carried daily. He felt an urge to protect her, not by taking control but by offering support that respected her choices and dignity. During their time at the market, he offered to help her carry heavier items. She hesitated, caught between pride and practicality, but eventually agreed. As they walked back, laden with supplies, they spoke casually about life, sharing small anecdotes and reflections. Their laughter blended with the city sounds, creating a sense of companionship and comfort. In that simple act, the man realized that connection was not just about shared history or gestures of support. It was about presence, respect, and consistency. Back at her small corner of the street, they continued to work together on her crafts. He observed quietly as she arranged items, offering suggestions only when asked, allowing her creativity and judgment to lead. The twins played nearby, occasionally seeking attention, and he responded with patience and warmth. Each small day-to-day interaction strengthened their relationship, building a sense of partnership rooted in respect, understanding, and genuine care. One evening, as the city lights flickered on and the air grew cooler, they sat quietly together, watching the children play. The woman shared a story from her past, a moment of hardship that had shaped her resilience and determination. She spoke with honesty and vulnerability, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. He listened intently, offering empathy rather than advice, acknowledging her experience and the strength she had shown in overcoming challenges. In that quiet exchange, their connection deepened further, moving beyond memory into the realm of shared understanding and emotional intimacy. He began to understand the depth of her strength and character, realizing that the hardships she had faced had not diminished her, but had forged a remarkable resilience. She, in turn, began to see him not just as someone from her past or a benefactor, but as a steady presence who respected her boundaries, appreciated her efforts, and genuinely cared for her well-being. The trust between them grew, subtle but undeniable, and both felt a sense of comfort in each other's presence that had been absent for years. Over time, they began to discuss small plans for the future. Not grand gestures, but realistic steps that could improve their daily lives and provide stability for the twins. They talked about better access to education, more opportunities for her crafts, and small projects that could give her financial independence, while allowing him to provide guidance without overstepping. Each plan was practical, grounded in reality, yet carried a sense of hope and possibility. The woman began to feel a renewed sense of control over her life, supported but never overshadowed. Throughout these interactions, the twins became a bridge between them. Their innocent curiosity, laughter, and joy created natural moments of connection, breaking down walls of hesitation and fear. They played freely, their laughter filling the space with warmth and life. The woman observed the man interacting with her children, noting his patience, kindness, and the way he allowed them to lead play without taking over. This further deepened her trust and comfort, allowing her to see him as someone who could be part of their world without threatening her autonomy or dignity. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between the man and the woman became stronger, yet always measured and respectful. They shared moments of joy, laughter, reflection, and quiet companionship. Each interaction, small or significant, reinforced the connection that had begun with recognition of the ring and the shared past. They were no longer just two individuals from different worlds brought together by chance. They were partners in navigating a new chapter of life, carefully building trust, respect, and emotional intimacy. One evening, as they watched the sun set over the city, the woman felt a quiet sense of hope she had not experienced in years. She realized that the man's presence was not about control or charity, but about genuine care, understanding, and respect. She could imagine a future where support and independence coexisted, where her children could grow in safety and love, and where she could rediscover aspects of herself that life had forced her to put aside. The man, observing her and the children, felt a sense of fulfillment and peace, knowing that his care and presence were appreciated, and that their bond was deepening naturally and meaningfully. By the end of this period, their relationship had moved from cautious recognition to a steady partnership, built on respect, empathy, and shared experience. The woman had begun to feel empowered, hopeful, and supported. while the man had rediscovered a connection to his past and a renewed sense of purpose in helping without dominating. The twins continued to be a source of joy and inspiration, reminding them both of the resilience, innocence, and love that formed the heart of their lives. Together, they were beginning to build a future, grounded in trust, understanding, and the rekindling of a bond that had endured time, distance, and hardship. As the weeks passed, the man and the woman found themselves spending more time together, not out of obligation, but because each moment with the other felt meaningful. The connection they had rediscovered was no longer just about memories or past emotions. It had grown into a living, breathing relationship built on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. The twins' laughter and joy became a part of their daily rhythm, bringing light into what had once been a life overshadowed by struggle. One morning, the man arrived with a small surprise. He had arranged for extra supplies for her crafts, enough to help her expand her small business. She looked at the carefully wrapped packages, her eyes widening in a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. She wanted to refuse, afraid that accepting would make her seem dependent, but he gently reassured her that his goal was to support her efforts, not replace them. With a small appreciative smile, she accepted, feeling a spark of hope for the first time in years. Over the next few days, she set to work with renewed energy. The man stayed nearby, offering guidance when asked, helping her plan small strategies to sell more crafts, and encouraging her to try new ideas. He never took control, never overstepped, but his presence made the work feel lighter. The twins played at her side, their laughter echoing through the street and drawing smiles from passers-by. Seeing them thrive under her care with the man's quiet support was a source of satisfaction and pride for both adults. As their interactions continued, the woman began to open up more emotionally. She shared stories from her past that had shaped her, moments of fear, loss, and resilience. The man listened with patience and empathy, never rushing, never judging. He spoke of his own life, acknowledging his mistakes, regrets, and the loneliness that success had sometimes brought. Their conversations became a safe space where honesty and vulnerability could flourish. Each exchange strengthened their bond, allowing trust to deepen naturally. One evening, after the twins had gone to sleep, they sat together on a small bench near her stall. The city was quiet, the streetlights casting a soft glow. He reached out, taking her hand gently, not to control or demand, but simply to offer reassurance and presence. She did not pull away. Instead, she allowed the touch, feeling a warmth and comfort she had not experienced in a long time. It was a moment that spoke volumes about trust, connection, and the possibility of building a life together, even after years apart. The man began to help in practical ways as well. He connected her with opportunities that allowed her to earn more without losing her independence. He advised on ways to manage her finances, suggested ideas to improve her sales, and quietly provided resources for her to succeed. She felt empowered, realizing that accepting help did not mean surrendering her autonomy. Instead, it was a partnership, one that respected her abilities while providing support where needed. Each small success became a shared victory, strengthening their bond and their hope for the future. The twins, ever curious and energetic, often became the center of joyful chaos. They would run between the two adults, giggling, asking questions, and sharing stories. Both the man and the woman learned to navigate these moments with patience, humor, and love. The children's laughter and innocent energy reminded them of life's simple joys and the importance of nurturing connections. Through the twins, they found a natural way to blend their lives together, creating a sense of family that was warm, respectful, and full of life. As time passed, the woman began to feel more secure, both in her personal life and in her renewed relationship with the man. She could see that he genuine,